All right. I think that's all.
Are we ready to get into the ugly?
Let's good. That was the good.
Yeah.
That was the good. And I honestly, I don't think there was anything ugly.
No.
There wasn't anything that was like absolutely horrendous.
No.
There was no.
There was things that can absolutely be better next year.
You talked a bit about the audio, like that.
Yeah.
That's an issue. So yeah, let's get into the bad. Okay. First off, I talked about let's go the same order we did. Game, production.
Sure.
The before event, and then the planning, the build up.
No.
So game wise, both packets, Friday and Saturday, were not fully developed. While we had more time available for us to write these adventures,
we didn't do any play tests. We
had done play tests of like the creatures.
Yeah.
But we didn't like simulate the game and like.
Also, we didn't simulate it with anybody who didn't have the knowledge of how the packet was supposed to work.
Yeah, so we didn't simulate the game. We tested monsters and encounters. Like I gave our in-store dungeon masters like the different things. So I'm like, let me know if this monster's broken or that kind of stuff. Yeah. So we tested some of it. But we definitely need to spend more time testing the packets because a lot of the feedback was the games were rushed. Yeah. Just because the packets weren't fully designed. Another big problem we hit was the packets were not, I don't know.
Super clear on mechanics?
Super clear on mechanics or just like super clean and efficient.
Yeah.
And Dungeon Master training was very lacking.
Yeah. There was definitely quite a few Dungeon Masters, just in my group of tables, who had questions about how different mechanics were supposed to work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I didn't have that information at the time.
Yeah, so overall, packet training, the adventure was... it was hard for Dungeon Masters to run.
Yeah.
And even with... Because we released the packets a month and a half in advance.
Yeah.
We released them a month and a half in advance, and we said, hey, here are the packets. They are in beta. We are going to change some slight things. Like, we're going to tweak monster things, but this is like... This is the bones of the packet. Yeah. Like, we're not going to change any huge things. Even though we released the packets a month and a half in advance, Dungeon Masters still felt like it wasn't enough time and it wasn't clearly communicated. Some Dungeon Masters only downloaded the packet a week before and they only had a
day
week.
Of. Yeah.
Or there was a decent amount of Dungeon Masters who showed up day of and didn't know they were Dungeon Masters until like it was like, well, somebody at your table needs to be a Dungeon Master because your Dungeon Master didn't show up. And so somebody had to be like, all right, well, I volunteer as tribute and grab a packet and read the packet right there and try to run a 4-hour game. Yeah. And while the packets had technically
it had what you needed.
It has the maps, it has the creatures. It
Having no prep work or time to figure out how you want to run it can be a stress on any DM.
A huge stress.
And especially for people who have never DM'd before.
Yeah, so the packets overall needed more fine-tuning, more clarity, more testing, but we also need to have better training for our Dungeon Masters to make the game run smoother. And again, that will also help save we had the complaint that the airship objective got completed too soon, and that hurt a lot of other tables' experiences because they didn't get to actually contribute to the objective that they chose. Yeah. Same thing with the final battle against Eos. Some of the complaints we got was, while my table only did 200 to 300 damage to Eos, and at the end he had taken 39,000 damage, which was 9,000 more damage than he needed. So it was like, why did my table even show up? Because we weren't able to do the main objective.
We had no impact on the overall battle.
And then we barely scratched Eos, and so it felt like my table was completely worthless, which is sad to feel because we want every table to have an impact on the thing. For sure. So to know that there was a few dead tables, and if you think about a war, like of course you're gonna have like
the individual soldiers generally aren't going to have too much of an impact. It's the army at large.
But it's D&D. This is a fantasy world. Like your choices.
Everyone is the main character.
Your choices should infect the battle. You're right. Every character is the main character. So that fantasy is something we need to deliver on.
For sure. Yeah.
And so here are our thoughts already. We're gonna have way more time for
Yeah.
writing the adventure. In fact, I've already been
We've
thinking.
got the outline. We've got it in the
We
works.
have ideas.
Yeah.
We have ideas, but we're gonna have the adventure written months in advance.
Yeah.
Like probably December is the final adventure released,
Yeah.
fully tested,
Yep.
worked out completely. So you have months to look at it and prepare.
Yep.
But also, the Dungeon Master training is going to be a huge thing we're going to work on, and the general training.
Yeah.
Having videos that you can watch that'll walk you through the packet. Having a 4-hour video of watching a whole group go through a simulation
Yeah.
of the game.
Mhm. So there's going to be as little room for miscommunication on mechanics or whatever else as possible.
Yeah, and we have the table runners, the generals who
Yeah.
are working on getting the communication to all the dungeon masters and stuff. They will also have to be handpicked because the generals this year were all volunteer based.
Yeah.
And we didn't nearly get enough volunteers to cover what we needed. That was
Yeah.
another complaint is the inner table generals who are supposed to get reporting, supposed to support the dungeon masters. There wasn't nearly enough.
There's
of
too
those.
many tables for the few generals that we had.
Mhm.
And the
and
few generals that
were
we
not
had
trained.
didn't have any training on the packets.
Yeah, they were all just solely focused on just grab the information,
Grab the numbers that they give you and,
that's all.
post it.
That's all the information they had.
Yeah.
So the general training will have to be a lot better. The packets will have to be a lot more fine tuned. The dungeon master training will have to be fine tuned, and we'll also have to create a system for backup dungeon masters to fill in the tables that do have DMs who don't show.
Yeah.
No call, no show. I think just overall communication
Mhm.
in the game system just needs to be refined a lot more, and that
For
needs
sure.
to be a big focus for next year.
Yep.
That's the biggest complaint about the game. That's the bad.
That is what went the worst.
Yeah,
in the 2
there's
days.
like little tiny things, like maybe we have a little less time on stage acting out skits.
There was a table that was right next to a speaker. That was definitely a little too loud for them.
Yeah, so there's little
Yeah.
tiny things, but if we have much better communication, packet transparency,
Everything will go more
Dungeon
smoothly.
Master training, I think it'll be a much better experience for everyone across the board.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the game. Let's talk about production.
Yeah.
And I guess Spencer, what are your thoughts on how we can improve the production both inside the mall and the live stream for next year?
I have so many thoughts about this. Like I've been thinking about almost nothing
And
but since.
We're gonna have a meeting, you and I,
Yeah.
so we can start working on this already. But I want to hear it.
So, first and foremost, it's also kind of related to what you were just saying. There was an element. I remember we did put a lot of effort into how do we get information from the tables to the sort of main brain of everything to update the live stream. And even with some of the solutions that we came up with, you talked about the generals that were kind of moving around. It wasn't really very clean getting to us at the production table, which we already talked about, have more people, train them a little bit better, things like that.
Yeah.
But in addition to that, one thing that we think, I guess we just completely forgot about because we were, kind of really concerned about making sure we have that problem solved. We didn't really put as much effort into getting the information back from production to the individual tables. You know what I mean? Because as a dungeon master, think about how frustrating it would be for you to be narrating the story, kind of getting into it halfway through this encounter, and then there's a big announcement over the loudspeakers that says, "JK, the
Airship's
encounter
down.
is over." And so
Yeah.
now you've got to like be on the fly, like, oh crap. Well, I guess the airship explodes under your feet, and you have to jump off and just like kind of go from there a little bit.
Yeah.
And so finding a more graceful way to update the dungeon masters in real time could also help alleviate some of the play
gameplay
experience.
issues.
Yeah.
And I do think that there's an element of it that's a production problem to solve, as well as a gameplay
A gameplay
issue.
problem. Yeah.
We're thinking of something web-based or app-based.
Yeah.
That dungeon masters will be able to self-report, and that you will also be able to see real-time how the objectives are being completed.
Yeah, that'd be a really valuable resource, I think.
Dang.
Um,
That's a good idea.
We've also talked a little bit about how to get sound to players in a more effective
Efficient.
way and
Yeah.
efficient way.
I think the live stream could have been very effective for most of the tables had they had the idea or had someone tell them,
to
hey,
stream it.
tune into the live stream and you'll hear everything that's going on the stage just
and,
fine.
and we could have very easily just printed out a QR code
Yeah,
that's
and put it
slapped
on
on
every
every
table.
that
Yeah.
says, watch the live stream for updates.
Yeah.
Now that is something that we had considered in leading up to the event. There's one major glaring issue with that solution, which is
Just
ultimately the
Wi-Fi?
reason that we didn't
Or-
end up going with it. Yeah, it's because of internet bandwidth. If we have
200 tables.
200
all live
tables,
streaming.
the same thing, that's putting so much strain on the
Cell towers.
Yeah,
the
it's like
bandwidth.
now it's the same problem where they can't get good reception
Yeah.
to their live stream because everyone's trying to stream it at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
So
I think one person, and it's something that we, I guess, could have tested or figured out a way to test.
How do you test 200 streams going on at the same time?
Yeah.
one thing that we thought about that we didn't end up going with this year because there were just some logistics problems that we had to overcome, didn't have time to figure it out. We were experimenting with the thought of short range FM radio transmitters.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not efficient to have 200
Boom boxes.
radios just like at every table
Yeah.
either, but it could be more like seamless, I guess. It's a way that
Yeah.
everybody could potentially have something local to them that is clear. They can adjust the volume themselves, and there's not really an issue of like bandwidth. There's not really an issue of being too close to the speaker and getting blown out, or like having speakers clipping and the clarity is
Yeah,
bad.
yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
it would just
It's definitely something we can explore
What-
for next
what
year.
if during that half hour, while people are sitting down, we do a table testing as well, where it's like, hey, for the next half hour, we want you to listen to us talking on stage, and also tuning in your radio to find out what works best for your team. And so like, because we just were worried about seating during that hour, but
Yeah.
that whole hour leading up to the game, we can also do, hey, tune in on the live stream. Here's the live stream. Hey, tune to this station. This is how you get in. Hey, if you have Bluetooth, here's the thing you need to connect. And during that whole hour of seating, we can get people. Of course, we relay the information way before. You have like a whole paper of like bring
of
an
like a
FM radio
DM
or
checklist
Yeah.
or something.
bring a Bluetooth speaker, whatever to have at your table. But then during that hour, it's like, let's get everyone set up on audio because audio is so important to have.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what we do.
Yeah, I had one other assistant, and the two of us were kind of trying to be in charge of that. Like as we were setting up, I would send him out to tables, or I would run out to tables myself, be like trying to get an idea for each zone in the mall. But having 200 tables in a big mall and a team of 2 people doing it is just not.
Yeah. What if
Not
we
efficient.
could like train our generals from 3 to 4? They already know what they're doing, but now their job is to stand by the speakers. And then you have each table who can like flag like we need more power, we need it louder, or it's that kind of stuff.
Yeah, if there's a way that we could say, hey, general in zone 1, tables 15 through 30 or whatever is struggling with sound, and then we can have some actually productive feedback, because we were getting all weekend long, hey, we can't hear over there, hey, we
Yeah.
can't hear.
Yeah.
But that's like not really an actionable concern,
Yeah.
because I'm like, well, I don't know where you are really,
We can't set up new speakers.
and I
just
only
for
have
them.
one
Yeah.
more guy who
Yeah,
can run.
I can't
Yeah.
leave here what I'm doing because it's one more guy. So maybe
So-
our generals are help with that too.
Yeah.
But go on, production wise, we're still so many things.
Yes. My number one biggest thing that I want to work on for next year, and I want to work with you, and I think that it would be a production improvement, but it would like take the whole experience, I think, to the next level, is what I'm going to call program scheduling.
Yeah.
I think it applies to the game, but it also maybe more applies to the live stream.
Yes.
Yeah.
Where we need to have the whole event timed maybe to the minute.
Yeah.
Where we have content that we're filling the airspace with or the stage with.
Yeah.
And we can follow along with that and make it more like, you mentioned sports broadcasting before.
Yeah.
Like when I was sitting there at this event, I was like, wow, I feel like I'm broadcasting a basketball game or something like that.
Yeah.
Like it was akin to that kind of style of entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think if we leaned into that and perfected it for our specific application, that would make this the coolest production. I think.
100%. And like, I've gone back and I've watched the live streams. And while it looks really good and the quality is spectacular, the amount of dead space that just happens,
Yeah.
I can't wait to like be able to sit down and edit it out and make like a full on. We cut out all the dead space, we get all the cool skits, and we get all the information and make it a really nice, clean video. But if I am just watching at home, it's a tough watch.
Yeah.
And so I absolutely believe having a full on whatever you said
Program scheduling.
Yeah,
program
program
scheduling
schedule.
I think will be a huge thing.
In
Yeah.
addition to that, one of the most important roles that we didn't have filled, I'm almost embarrassed to like say this on
Stage manager.
is a stage manager.
We didn't have a
We
stage
didn't-
manager.
No.
Josh and I were managing who was going up on stage
Yeah.
and if everything was taken
And
care of. For
Josh
them.
would have to stop whatever he's doing and run to find the dungeon master
Yeah.
or somebody or
Yeah.
the actor.
And that's not their job. Yeah.
Yeah, it just adds stress to the production team
Yeah.
that doesn't have to be there.
And they also
especially
don't
if we
have all
other
the
problems to
knowledge
solve.
of what should be on stage.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they're great at covering what's going on stage, but they don't know the players in the D&D
In the
game.
game.
They don't know the
Yeah.
characters. They don't
Yeah,
they don't know how the game's being run.
when we were trying to get the players from the live stream up on to get interviewed or whatever.
Yeah.
I was, on comms being like, "Hey, there's somebody in a Minotaur costume. They're running around. I can't see them, but they're somewhere, and you should interview them because that would make cool content."
Yeah.
But yeah, if we had a person whose job it was to know the program schedule and wrangle the whoever was supposed to be on stage and get them going, definitely at least one person, maybe a team of people,
Yeah.
because it's a big job.
It's a huge job.
And it would make everything run really smoothly. And I think that, combined with an actual program schedule, combined with all the other elements of production that we've been talking about, would take this to the next level for sure.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That reminded me of a good and a bad that I didn't highlight was how the game changed based off of the players' actions.
Yeah.
Friday's game had a completely different ending from what we had originally written, because we had kind of like written out different possible endings.
Yeah.
But then while the game was going on, based off of player feedback, based off of what Dax, the dungeon master, and based off of what the actors playing the characters were like, they were like, honestly, we feel like this is how it might end. And they had to, in the last half hour, come up with a completely different ending, which ending would affect Saturday's game.
Yeah.
And so that was
All the other endings, because of the way that the bad guys had to die at the same time, there generally wasn't a way where they were going to interact at all because they're in two separate locations and they need to die at the same time.
Which presented a logistical issue called the characters were canonically twins.
Yep.
And as a result, we had them played
The
by the
one
same
actor.
actor.
and so he can't be both
Two
characters at the
characters.
same time.
Which means we can't have a climactic skit to finish out on Saturday
And-
because
Yeah.
there's just no way to have the one actor play two people.
While this was really cool,
Yeah.
so this is the heart of D&D is people's choices interacting with the game and with the dungeon master having to be able to flex and change their story based
Yeah.
off of what was going on. While this is a really cool aspect, it did hurt player experience as well. We got some feedback that Friday was like, why did we even bother playing if we didn't get to kill the villain?
Yeah.
And same thing with Saturday, the way Saturday's game with, and this is on me because I was the dungeon master for Saturday. Some of the feedback we got was because the way, spoilers, the way the story ended was the two demigods killed, well,
Skotos
Skotos killed
Eos,
Eos
and
and died
Skotos died of his own wounds.
because they both were going to die.
Yeah.
They both had taken enough damage to
die.
numerically
Yeah.
die. And Eos was going to try to run away to try to save himself, and Skotos stops him from running away, and in the end, they both die. But the feedback was we didn't like that we didn't get to kill the gods. both Friday and
Oh,
Saturday.
that Skotos
because
was the one
Skotos
who
killed
did it.
Eos. Technically, it was the players who killed him. They had dealt the damage. Eos was going to die. Maybe if he was able to retreat and do something, maybe he was going to live. But it was the final act of Skotos stopping him because Friday's game allowed Skotos to be there. And so some of the feedback was like, we didn't get to kill the gods. So it was like, it was kind of Vox
Anticlimactic.
not
Yeah.
Vox Machina. That's
No.
Critical Role.
Yeah.
Ex Machina.
Oh, it, like literally Demi Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Demi Deus Ex Machina. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I love that the players had the freedom to change the story, and I love that the Dungeon Master had the freedom to change the story. But we have to be very careful to make sure that the players still get the whatever is deserved to
Yeah.
them. If they deserve to die, they all should die. It should be a TPK. And if they deserve to kill the god, they should feel like they killed the god. And I felt like that was taken away a bit from both days.
It's interesting to compare that to last year's because the finale of last year's game was one of the most epic moments of my life. And I didn't even play in it, just being there with everybody. And there's one interesting difference that I want to point out that may or may not have contributed to the way this year's turned out. And it's that last year we had, both years we had one actor who was actively involved in the production. Last year it was
Janie.
Yeah, it was Janie, but she was playing Eldath.
Eldath.
And
She
Eldath,
was playing the people's hero.
the protagonist, who
The protagonist.
represented everyone in the mall.
Yeah.
And this year, the actor was Wyatt playing Eos and Skotos,
The antagonist.
the antagonists, who was opposed to everyone in the mall.
Yeah.
And so when they got that last climactic thing, Eldath still died,
Yes.
Yeah.
but she got to. Oh,
Kill
sorry.
that guy.
Eldath died.
Yeah.
Yes, Eldath died, and also the people weren't the ones who
Dealt the final
dealt
blow.
the final blow.
It
It was Eldath.
Eldath.
Even though the story sort of
Yeah.
made it possible to,
like everybody channeled their attacks
Yeah,
through
yeah.
Eldath.
Yeah.
but it
But
wasn't.
Eldath was the key piece. And so
Exactly.
it's
Yeah.
like the same thing happened. The gods, the actors were the key pieces.
but they represented.
But they had a protagonist that
yes,
was
Yes.
one year they represented the
People.
players, and one year they didn't. And I wonder if that contributed in any way to,
Yeah.
To that
this
feeling.
feeling of dissatisfaction with the ending, even though functionally it was kind of the same.
On paper,
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It was the
Yeah.
gods' powers that killed the final villain. Yeah. So that's just an interesting thing. If you are a dungeon master, that's a really good takeaway. Is like, even if you're gonna have some superpower help, it should be because the players earned it, and it shouldn't feel like it was the superpower that was the final
Yeah.
say. It was the players' efforts.
Yeah.
So yeah, really interesting. So that's production, that's gameplay. Let's talk about the before event,
Sure.
and then we'll finally talk about the
Yeah.
pre-production.
Can I jump into with one thing that was
Yeah.
completely out of our control about the day of leading up to the event thing that we just like should do better next year, but didn't see coming? The mall that we performed this in, or that we put this event on in, has skylights in the
Oh.
ceiling.
Yeah.
And when we were planning this, I mean,
In the
90% of the time it's the afternoon, evening.
Yeah.
But the panels and some of the things that were going on
And
the
the
stage during the event, we started as soon as 10 o'clock.
Yep.
Yeah.
There wasn't a lot going on. It was realistically it was noon by the time things were getting going on the stage day of. And one thing we didn't consider, maybe that's just on us, but like we had no way of knowing, the sun was shining directly onto the stage, and it
Baking
made
everybody who was
everyone was hot. It looked kind of dumb
looked
because
terrible.
it
Yeah.
was just like glaring on
Hot
their faces.
shadows,
Yeah, and
hard shadows.
and so we should have maybe just seen that coming, I guess. But for next year, now we know either put the stage somewhere else or have maybe a second stage that we can do panels on that's a little bit more shaded.
The idea we talked about in the debrief was doing the panels in the reserve, which is
Oh.
a private room. Now it would take a lot more work because now you need 2 AV teams. You need one for
Right.
the stage,
Yeah.
and you need one for the green or the room. But that room is completely closed off. We don't have any sun. We can completely control the sound in that room. And that might be a great place for people to get away from the mall
Yeah.
and do a quiet panel and be able to ask questions and for be a lot more intimate. That was another thing. Well, we'll talk about, because this is the before.
Yeah.
This is all the before stuff going on. So the panels, I felt like were, while a good idea, a complete wash.
They weren't planned at all.
Well, the layout of the tables, you can only fit like 15 to 20 people in front of the stage.
Yeah.
And so and the panel schedule kind of came out last minute. So
Yeah.
people didn't really have time to be like, I want to go to this panel.
Yeah.
And so the panels themselves, while the people who were talking did a fantastic job, the organization, the structure, the way the stage was set really was not a conducive place to have speakers.
Nope.
That's just, unfortunately, the panels were very much an afterthought.
Yeah.
And so we didn't do the panels and the VIPs justice who talked. So that's one thing too.
Yeah.
What's one of the bads? The other bad I would say was the vendors who were all there were fantastic.
Yeah.
But we had we didn't have clear communication and expectation of some of what we wanted from the vendors. So
Yeah.
we had
the space they were gonna be.
mhm.
They had the time they needed to set up.
And we had
all
the
that.
VIPs there, and we gave them vendor space. The idea was you can use this space as meet and greets, that kind of stuff.
Meet and greets, or if you have merch to sell.
Yeah,
or-
and and this is definitely not saying anything bad about the VIPs, but Rob and
Mhm.
his camera guy were just constantly filming content,
Yeah.
and so they weren't
weren't really at their booth to do meet and
Same
greets.
thing with the Duke. He was much better used walking around meeting people
Yeah.
in the wild instead of I'm just going to sit here for 2 hours and sign pictures of me.
Yeah.
He's not that kind of influencer.
Sure.
So we have to be very clear next year when we do the vendor spacing, because
Yeah.
we only have a limited vendor spacing, is what do you actually want?
Yeah.
As a VIP, do you want a vendor space to meet and greet people, or do you want
To be moving around and
free to
interacting
move
with
around,
the
interact
events.
with people,
Yeah.
interact with the event? Because we have now these holes, these empty spaces.
Yeah.
Like Johnny Stanton was sitting there because he had a vendor space
Yeah.
to show off and sell his product, but then he had 2 to 3 empty spaces next to him, and so it's somebody smiling while they're missing a few front teeth. It's noticeable.
Yeah.
And so the vendor layout, the vendor communication is absolutely something we need to be better
For
on.
sure. Yeah.
And the before the event thing, the painting, miniatures,
Yeah.
the quest.
Yeah.
The quest was really underbaked.
All of it was last minute. Yeah.
The panels, I felt like everything before the main game was very underbaked. We could
Yeah.
have absolutely done better with signage to direct people to the painting.
Yep.
We could have advertised the schedule way more in advance. We could, the quest I think only 10 to 12 people completed the quest.
Out of nearly 1,500.
Out of
Yeah.
nearly 1,500 people,
Yeah.
10 to 15 people. And it was either
And
it was
that's
too
generous.
hard.
Yeah.
It was too, maybe it was only 5 to 6 people.
Honestly. Yeah.
And so maybe it was too hard. Maybe it was not well
it
designed.
just wasn't clear.
It
Yeah.
wasn't clear. And I literally put together the quest
Was it morning
the
of?
the day before.
Yeah.
The day before. I put the
Yeah.
quest together the day before. And the idea of it was good. The execution could have absolutely done better. And
No, while we did spend so much more time this year compared to last year getting stuff set right beforehand when it came to just the event as a whole, there's so many little things that still ended up slipping through the cracks that just didn't have the time to get fleshed out the way they needed
yeah,
to be.
and so that's another learning point is we have to, all the time and attention we're giving to the game, we need to give a good amount of that attention as well to the before the game to make the before the game such an amazing experience. Because this is another one of the feedbacks we got is perceived value.
Yeah.
People have spent money to come here. And if you had a mad game or if you had a bad dungeon master and if you didn't really get to do the quest and that kind of stuff, it was why did my table spend
$90 altogether.
$90
Yeah.
to play D&D when we could just be at home playing D&D.
Even you could even be playing in this game because one of the elements that
Was the remote play.
was remote play. Yeah, like
and you
it
could
was
be
totally
playing for free.
Yeah.
And so like why did we spend $90 and spend a whole day to come here when the things that we came for were not perfect or were not satisfying? And while $15 is a small, it's a reasonable.
It depends on
amount.
who you are. Yeah.
No, it's a reason. Like to go to a convention for $15 and to play in a huge game like this, I think $15 is pretty fair.
Sure.
But it needs to have that
The
value.
Yeah. If you don't have a good time, $15 is still $15 down the drain.
And that's
if you don't enjoy it.
And now that's a reason not to come next year.
Yeah.
Because you just spent $15 and it was okay.
Yeah.
But it wasn't fantastic. So if we advertise, hey, we're doing it again next year.
They'll be like, it was okay last
did it
year.
last
I don't
year,
need to do it again.
but I don't need to do it again.
Yeah.
And so we absolutely need to be able to be like,
so
hey,
this is us telling you we're going to do better next year.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
There's so many things we're going to improve on, but that perceived value is absolutely one of them. And I wonder if some of the ideas I'm having is what if we just lower the gameplay ticket to like, if you just want to sit and play, it's only like $5. But if you want a miniature and like a gift bag of all the cool stuff, maybe that's $15.
You get the lanyard. You get
so
the,
like depending if you
minis.
just want to show up and play, it's really cheap.
Yeah.
And then if you want some cool stuff, maybe it's more, and we bake into the ticket price.
Yeah.
Like the cost of a lanyard and the cost of a shirt. Maybe you can spend $35.
Different tiers of what level you want to engage at.
And the idea isn't to like microtransact. Like I'm not going video game.
We're not making it pay to play.
Loot boxes or anything like that. But the idea that like the whole reason we do this is because we love the TTRPG community and we want this to be like a knockout game. We want this to be so fun.
That people can't wait till we do it next year.
Yeah, and I don't want the cost to be something that
keeps people from coming.
People away.
Yeah.
And so
but we do need to make enough money to be able to do it.
We absolutely need to make enough money to do it. And so that I think this is the ugliest thing about the event. We lost $10,000 as a company, and that is counting the money that was possibly stolen from us.
Yeah.
If we don't get that money, so really quick story, we did ticket sales through a website. The website processor, the credit card company that took people's payments, have not released those funds to us, and they're threatening to give the funds back to the customer.
Yeah.
So we have $13,000 sitting in a bank account
sitting
somewhere
in limbo
we
that
do
we
not
can't
have
access
to.
And best case scenario, we do get it after a couple of months. Worst case scenario,
it gets
we never
bounced
see it.
back to the customers, and then we have to either beg the customers to give it back,
Which probably not, right?
I mean, like, we'll send a message out if that does. Hey, if you received a refund, please send it back. But like, I'm expecting maybe half of the people to like get that message and then honor that. Like, you know.
Like, I went. I'll pay for the ticket. It's.
But like, anyway, so if we lose that money, we're now in the hole.
Only $10,000 after that.
Yeah,
right?
only $10,000.
Yeah.
If we don't get that money, we're in the hole $20,000, which is
20 plus.
which is like that hurts because we charged for the event and we even sold merch for the event.
Yeah.
And to be in the hole $20,000, like I'm not trying to make profit on the event.
But
if we
need
lose,
to be alive as a business.
we can't.
We can't ride on credit and goodwill forever.
Yeah, and so
you have a family, we have employees.
We're a small
we need
game
to live.
store.
We're a small business.
So
$20,000.
We can take $20,000. We
can take the hit.
Take it, but
we can't do that forever.
Yeah, I mean, like, if we do this for 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 years and we're always losing money, it's like
it's gonna die. We won't be able to keep doing it.
We can't do it.
Yeah.
So that's the ugliest part.
One thing I'll bring up about that is that it's been, I'll say, admirable that for these first 2 years, we funded this ourselves.
Yeah.
True.
Like, we haven't gone anywhere for sponsors. And that was one thing that Josh and I were talking about is like
we had really
we had
small
a couple of
sponsors on
sponsors
the
the
first
first
one,
year.
but
Sure.
like negligible. Last year
Yeah.
we spent $30,000, and like the sponsors covered for, I want to say, 3,000 to 4,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I won't. I am not trying to take away from the people who
Yeah.
did contribute. Thank you so much.
Yes.
This year was completely us, though, for sure.
Yeah. And I guess it depends on how you count that. Also, like there were people who volunteered their services that would normally charge for them,
can't-
things like
yeah,
that.
Josh
Like, yeah, we-
volunteered his 51st Productions.
and we don't and we don't want to take away from that at all. But most of the time, when people are putting on events of this scale, they are getting money from outside sources. And,
Yeah.
and in fact, I've been thinking we are in a mall, which is a place that every single store in here actively benefits from having
People in the
1,500
mall.
more people in the
Yeah.
mall for a whole weekend. And so it seems fairly reasonable to reach out and say, hey, if you'd be willing to pitch in a little bit, we're doing this event. It's going to be awesome. We're trying to make it as good as we can, and whatever
Yeah.
you're able to contribute. And there are also companies in the TTRPG space or in like the nerd space that I'm confident would be happy to contribute this or that if we would reach out and ask about it.
We can look into that next year.
Yeah.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
that would
the-
just make a huge difference, I think, to have that little bit of, wiggle
Yeah.
room in our
For sure.
pockets.
And I think that's one of the solutions for that is like working with more people,
Yeah.
sponsorships, being smart about how we spend the money. There's absolutely, well, we did spend a lot of money this year to pay for a huge production
Yeah.
that we will be able to use a
A
lot of.
lot of it wasn't just unlike the merch where we bought it once and we can only make money off it once. A lot of it is investing in stuff that we'll be able to use.
Yeah, the
down the
sound,
line.
the speakers, we spent $5,000 on sound equipment alone
Yeah.
that we will be able to use next year. So that's going to pay for itself. One thing we're looking at actually is buying all the tables and chairs.
Yeah. Instead
and
of
so
just renting
every
them every year.
Dead
Yeah.
Wars, maybe we buy 50 tables and 200 chairs. And so because we spent $7,000 to $8,000 to rent out all the tables and chairs. Like
Yeah.
that's a huge part of the budget is just tables and chairs.
And unfortunately, like
They're not the best tables
we're
and
not
chairs
happy
either.
with the tables and chairs.
Yeah, they're not the best.
They're
but like
the cheapest we can
they're
find.
the cheapest. And so if we instead spend that money and buy tables and chairs, that means next time when we have the event, we don't have to pay for tables.
We don't have
and
to rent them,
chairs.
and we're happy with the quality.
Yeah.
Plus, as you go to other events like FanX, for
Dragon
example, you guys are doing
Steel.
stuff at, and you're
Yeah.
running games and things.
We could say, hey,
You
we
can
have
provide
tables and
them
chairs
yourself.
You
Yeah,
do
if-
not need to.
Yeah.
Or I don't know, maybe the event would just provide them themselves. But
Depends
you know
on
what
the
I'm saying.
venue, but
Yeah.
we
some-
can
some
definitely
can.
find application for a couple hundred tables sitting
and
around.
chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We can set
Yeah,
up.
Absolutely.
we want to do LARPs and stuff like
Yeah.
that. If we have 100 tables that we can turn into a big banquet hall,
Yeah,
that
and
kind of stuff. Like
Big old tents and everything. Yeah,
like that infrastructure will be used for other events. So.
for sure.
So yeah, there's definitely ways to save money next year. There's
Yep.
definitely ways to be smarter to budget. There's other ways we can bring in money without putting the money on the customers.
Yeah.
Like we don't have to do it on ticket sales. I really don't want to raise the ticket price. In fact, I really want to make it even more approachable.
But
So
we got to find a way to at least break even.
yeah, break. That should be our goal.
Yeah.
That's probably the ugliest thing. All right, so and then let's talk about the pre-production.
Yeah.
Boy, do we have plans for a better live stream
Yeah.
game that we're gonna do for this event? The ideas we're already coming up with for the game are really exciting.
I'm so stoked about the ideas that we've
and
had.
I'm not gonna talk about it
Nope.
because it's very.
It's very
in the
infant
works.
in the works. Yeah.
But the focus will be player driven story.
Mhm.
You will drive the story. One thing I want to do, I will say this, is I want to release an adventure either bi-monthly
Yeah.
that anyone anywhere can just play, and it's a very quick 1 hour adventure,
Yeah.
free. We'll provide all the resources like we did with remote play.
And then tell us how it went.
And then report in how it went, and that will start to set up the dominoes for the final game.
Yeah.
And that will change the world. The whole the whole thing we got to watch out for is we need to be able to have it so people who want to invest time and care and they want to get immersed into the world, they can. But also for the very casual, hey, I just want to go play D&D at this really cool thing with my friends, they can still completely
get enough out of it.
They can still completely understand the game, that kind of stuff. So you have something for both the diehards and you have it be very approachable for the casuals. And I think that's what's one of the hard things for Critical Role or Dimension 20 to do is like, if I want to get into Critical Role, okay, I'm looking at hundreds of hours of watching a live stream to really understand the story. And so
dozens of 4 to 6 hours. I don't know how long they usually go for. Like 4 hours.
They're 4 hours. Yeah. And so we have to be able to make it digestible for if it's just like, hey, me and my buddies, we're going to go play D&D this weekend.
Yeah.
Maybe like a 4 to 5 minute video that's like, here's the world. Here's what you're fighting for. Get ready.
Yeah.
You know, like making it approachable, but making it deep enough for
enough for the people who
care.
Do have the time to invest. Yeah.
As well as making it so that the people who want to invest a lot are getting a lot out of it.
Yeah.
One thing that we've talked about a lot that we've tried to implement a little bit, but haven't done a super great job at is being an ARG element into the game.
Yeah.
So if you really want to dive deep,
Yeah.
watch all the content, scrub for, some Easter eggs or some crazy stuff, that there are payoffs for that.
I've been thinking about that a lot recently because I've been trying to mentally plan some of our like later
outside
down
events.
the line LARPs and events and everything, because the ones that we've done before, while we really tried to focus on making it so anyone can come in and join, great for the casual person, it doesn't have too much enjoyment factor for the people who want to really dive into it.
Yeah, we did a very light ARG, and we had a really cool story element for. So I'll just real quick spoiler it here. In the campaign we did, there was a character named Arden, and he was a very pacifist, very likable character in the party. And it turned out Arden was the Dark Prince, Skodos, the villain that we had to fight on Friday. But listening to his story, understanding his character, you realized why he was the villain. He was a very tragic villain, a reluctant villain.
Yeah.
He did not want to be the villain, but he knew he had to be the villain to motivate everyone
All
to
the players
kill
to kill
his
him
brother.
so that his brother will die.
His brother was the true villain.
Yeah.
And the only way for Eos to die was also for Skodos.
They had to die in tandem.
They're both sides of the same coin.
Their life force was connected.
They're twins, so you have to kill both of them. And he knew, I have to die to kill my really evil brother. Kind of like, I don't know, what's that one with Dragonheart? You know, you got the dragon and you got the prince who share the heart. Kind of like that kind of thing. The dragon wasn't a bad guy, but he had to be the bad guy. You had to kill the dragon to kill the really bad prince.
Yeah.
And so but not most of the players didn't know this.
Yeah.
When you show up Friday, you just know there's a dark prince, and he's evil because he's controlling people. He's forcing them to fight. Yeah, he's laid
to
siege.
their sins.
He's done all these terrible things. But for the fans who watched, for the fans who did the ARG, because there was codes hidden throughout, they would learn that Skodos was a very sympathetic villain. You had to kill him, but you didn't really want to. And so that was a cool reward for those people who invested themselves in it. And we want more payoffs like that for the hardcore fans to like really understand the depth of it, and for the really shallow people or not really shallow, but the people who don't have the time or the energy to invest in it to still be able to understand the stakes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, totally. Having it both-sided where casuals can enjoy it and the people who want to really dive deep, it's going to be really important.
Sorry, I'm drinking my mate.
No, you're fine. Should we talk about what we're excited about next year?
There's so much we're excited
Yeah.
about. We've talked about all the things that we want to do to improve on. And I really feel like we can do it.
Yeah.
And we're already thinking about it. We're already
Yeah.
talking about it. This year, we gave ourselves 4 months to prepare
Yeah.
for this. Last year, we gave ourselves 1 month.
Seriously.
We gave
Maybe
ourselves
2. Like
1 to 2 months. Like the adventure wasn't written until like the week
the
before.
fact that it came together as good as it did as good as it did on our first year is nothing short of a miracle.
Yeah.
Like,
So the first year, and same thing. We only had 4 months to really prepare
Yeah.
for everything, and
this
like,
year we're doing like 8 months.
No, dude, we're doing the full year. Like we're
Basically.
already thinking.
Yeah.
Spencer's already thinking about it for the next year. Like we're already putting work into it,
Yeah.
even if it's not like anything substantial yet. We're absolutely taking.
We're getting the dominoes set up.
So
Yeah.
I'm so excited for next.
It's gonna
year.
be awesome.
So excited for next
Yeah.
year because we've learned so much. We've grown so much.
Yeah.
And I feel like we can offer something unique
Yeah.
that I don't think.
Anyone else has.
Very prideful statement, but I truly believe like we got something really special.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited for that. So excited.
Ditto.
All right. I don't know. Any final thoughts?
Now we pretty much covered everything I think about.
You're a cool guy, Spencer.
Hey, I
Yeah.
appreciate that. You guys
Thank
are pretty
you,
cool
Spencer.
yourselves.
All right. That was.
Oh.
How long is this episode?
Hour and a half.
I mean, but who knows by the time we end up cutting it up and everything. But we've currently been recording for an hour and a half.
Wow.
Yeah.
Holy
Maybe,
cow.
We can
maybe
make
we
it
chop it up into
two-parter.
2 episodes.
Yeah.
Welcome to the longest podcast episode we've ever done.
Yeah.
Thank
There's
you.
a lot to say about the Dead Wars.
There's so much, and there's even more.
Yeah.
There's a lot of little things, but that was a lot of
Yeah.
the major things. We are so grateful for everyone who came
Seriously.
to this game. We're so grateful for everyone who helped with this game. All the things that I said were the bad and the ugly, that was not directed towards anyone. I am so happy.
And they
with
pale
everyone
in
I worked.
comparison to the enjoyment and the amazing people we got to work with. Like everything that went right with the event, honestly, I do feel like outweighs all the bad.
Everyone was firing at 100%.
Yeah.
And there's no single thing that I could be like, oh, it was because this thing
This
or
guy
this
was a
person
slacker
was
and
not a good
didn't
person.
come to the
or-
plate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, everyone gave their all for this event.
Yeah.
The players, the dungeon masters, the generals, like everyone
Absolutely.
did everything possible to make this event amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so grateful for that. Thank you for everyone. And that just makes me more excited with next year's
Yeah.
because like the better organization we have, the more time we have to bake it, I feel like we can make it double to triple times
For sure.
cooler, more fun, more
Absolutely.
exciting. So thank you for watching.
Yeah.
And
You can find us on
Oh,
all
yeah.
of our social medias. We Geek Together, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
boy, and we're gonna be putting out a lot of media content.
Yeah.
One of the videos we're working on is a week in the day of a game store owner. We're gonna be putting out a lot more content.
A lot more long form stuff on YouTube.
So
Long form as in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah,
but
yeah. So if you want to follow us, make sure to follow us because we will absolutely be dropping stuff about the next Dead Wars.
Yeah,
Like pretty soon. Very soon.
absolutely.
Thank you.